Welcome to the walkthrough of frequently made mistakes for assignment 2A in my CS 891 course in the spring of 2023. First, taking a look at some of the issues on the client side, there's no need to be encoding anything in this assignment. You don't have to encode the queries because we're not using regular expressions the way we were in the previous movies EX assignment. So you don't need to do this. Secondly, please take a careful look at the specification comment at the top of the Get Timing API method in the Beans class, the client Beans class, because it'll tell you to do something different than what's being done here. Now let's turn our attention to the many problems I saw with the Retrofit database API class and timer API class, or interface really. First of all, there's some important things missing here. You need to make sure you put the right strings here for the path name. There's a very subtle naming bug here. This is a good example of why you should try to use symbolic constants wherever possible. This is the wrong annotation. A lot of people got this wrong. I think that ChatGPT will help you, so you should make sure you're using it and checking your output against it to see if it's giving you better results and doing better type checking. Down here, this is also the wrong annotation, and this is also the wrong annotation. So all these methods have the wrong annotation here. By process of elimination, you can probably figure out what the right example is. But again, ChatGPT is most likely your friend. This particular example is also incorrect. Once again, ChatGPT will help you figure out what you need to do to fix this. This is the wrong timed path to use here. The wrong path is being used here. And so that's going to give back results that don't make any sense because we're doing things in the wrong place. Stuff is being duplicated here that shouldn't be. This particular example has the variables in the path name in the wrong order. So these values need to be reordered. You have to think carefully by going and looking at what the controller's expecting. Once again, ChatGPT is your friend because it should generate these things for you in a more orderly way. And this is also yet another example of not using the timed path correctly. So make sure that you carefully look at this stuff and inspect it, and don't just sort of try it randomly, but use the tools at your disposal to make sure that you do things correctly. Okay, so here, this particular method doesn't really implement the spec. You need to do more thorough error checking. And please go back and take a look at the example case studies we walked through in class and in the videos and in my GitHub repository. For example, take a look at the live lessons repository in the WebMVC folder in the EX4 project for an example of how to do this properly. Whenever you start writing long variable names, that's probably a good place to use var. And this is also the wrong response message. Please be careful here. You need to return body, not message. That'll cause some very interesting bugs. Now let's turn our attention to some issues that arose when reviewing the server side, particularly the database repository. So this database method, this is the one that's using Spring Data API keywords. It's missing some keywords, so make sure that you ignore the case. I don't think you need to order things in assignment 2A. You will need to order things in assignment 2B, but you don't need to do it in assignment 2A. So just if you're getting weird results and your tests are failing, that's probably why. Let's now turn our attention to the movie class. So there's some stuff missing here. You have to implement the specification properly. And then there's a bunch of issues with compare to and equals. Let's take a look at a bunch of different problems. So first of all, just use compare to ignore case rather than using to lowercase and compare to. I think it'll be faster to do compare to ignore case. Likewise, please use case insensitive comparison, not a case sensitive comparison. Down here in the equals method, this implementation is incorrect. It's missing a bunch of things. So the best way to figure out how to do this is, again, to ask ChatGPT to generate you an equals method and then take a look at what it does and see if it makes sense. Maybe do a little bit of digging to make sure it's working correctly. Likewise, this implementation is also incorrect. For example, if you give it a null object, it's going to blow up. So that'll cause you all kinds of problems. And make sure you carefully check this stuff. And again, ChatGPT will probably help you out. You don't need to use the equals ignore case method in equals. Believe it or not, you can just use equals to compare the IDs. And you also don't need to compare the vectors, just compare the IDs. And you do need, for assignment 2B, to implement a hash code method. Some of you already did that. That was good. But you don't need to do lower casing here. You can just hash the ID directly. Now let's turn our attention to some issues that arose when taking a look at the implementations in the database service class. So first of all, whatever you do, don't have the search method call through to calling list of and then calling the other search method. It needs to be the other way around. You want the search method that takes a single query to call the JPA method that corresponds to what you need to do here. Down here, you can see we've got a bunch of issues with the search method. This is one that I went over multiple times in class and put up several videos that walk through this stuff. So if you didn't address these issues, I didn't review your code because I figured that you just weren't watching what was going on. And so it's unfair to expect me to keep going back and reviewing your code when I've already done it multiple times. So first of all, make sure you use parallel stream, not use stream support.stream. Not the end of the world if you use map followed by flat map, but it's probably a cleaner way to do it using flat map. Whatever you do not use sequential here. We've talked about this multiple times. That causes the entire stream to be sequential. Instead, split your code up into two parts, one parallel and one sequential using a local variable. And for the part that's sequential, just say .stream. You don't have to say .stream, .sequential. That's redundant. There are other ways to fix this to use a parallel stream. We will talk about that for assignment 2B when we get back from break. Please make sure you put sorted first, then followed by distinct, and make sure you sort things. Don't just put distinct. So you have to make sure that you sort it before you use distinct. And when you do, in fact, do the sorting, you just can do this. As long as you've implemented the compare to method properly in the movie class, it will be picked up automatically when we sort. So there's no need to pass in some method reference here, especially one that's incorrect. And then, as we saw before, you don't need to use a tree set. Definitely don't use a hash set because you have to sort it. You don't need to use a tree set if you don't want to. If you do use a tree set, then you can kind of clean things up a little bit. But this code is a little bit too much work, although it was a clever idea to use a set, and that gave me some good ideas. I think ultimately doing things with a parallel stream is probably the way to go. And again, we'll talk more about that after break. Some other things with search, please make sure that you use parallel stream here rather than stream followed by parallel. And also, please swap the order in which parallelism is enabled. We want to do things by having the queries run in parallel, and each query then runs by calling the appropriate database method. So just a little shift, and the reason for doing that, of course, is we're moving in the direction, ultimately, of just having a single database call. And then finally, you can do this approach if you want to. However, if you do this, it's only going to work if you implement the hash code method in the movie class. So if you do it this way, make sure that you implement the hash code method. If you don't implement the hash code method, then this way will not work. Okay, and then last but not least, we've talked about this a lot of times. This is really a leftover, frequently made mistake from assignment 1C. Just make sure that you clean this up to have a single call to the helper method in the future utils class to do all the work that's being done here in a more verbose way. So that's basically my walkthrough of frequently made mistakes. You'll see that some of you did not get reviews. That's because you didn't take the time to watch the videos that I've been putting out or come to class or look at the discussion forums to see the various issues that have been addressed already and that I'd already addressed with other reviews. So henceforth, no more reviews if you don't take the time to address what's in these earlier reviews and incorporate them by the time you submit the final version of your code.